All right, this is another podcast in the free will, religion, and science. Well, science and religion. Okay, podcast, and I'm with George Ortega, and we're going to talk about causality. Try to get to the root of this thing, or understand it metaphorically, if nothing else. Understand that it's a cause and effect universe. We're stuck with the dynamic. It all looks like we're really fancy stuff, but it's all made out of a really deep universe. Inside of you is just acres of complexity, just your brain alone, 100 billion neurons, all right? And each one of those has 20 connections to the other neurons. I mean, just an incredibly complex road. I mean, more roads than on America times the speed of light squared. That's how many roads just your brain has. And so, yeah, it's really, really complex, but it's all roads, okay? It's all real things. And you do what the real things demand. So I would use a metaphor like an eddy in a stream. You see all that complex movement, but it's just water, it's just sand, it's just rocks, it's just gravity. There's no magical force. The swirls don't go any way they want to. They go the way the circumstance dictate. Even the weather, right? Nobody says, hey, the weather gods, right? Okay, they did 2,000 years ago. But we don't think the gods are swirling the clouds anymore and they're making hailstones or they're doing this, or they decide one day, I'm going to be hail today, damn it. No, they're not doing that, okay? They're following the rules, and that's all we're doing.
Excellent. And again, like the fundamental rule of reality is causality. In other words, like that nothing happens that's not caused. And that's what makes free will impossible, and that's what people need to understand. It's not just like the fact that everything is caused, but then applying it to our human decisions. And like before we explain causality in more detail, we just have to like also mention that like if you try to say that not everything is caused, if you try to say that some things are uncaused, that will not give you a free will. Because if you're saying that our decisions are not caused, then obviously, clearly, we are not causing them, our will is not causing them. So like the only thing that could... Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, you'd end up with a random will. And what good is a random will, right? I mean, that's even stupider, right? I mean, it's bad enough that we might have an illogical will, or we might have a wrong will, or we might think, we might make a mistake. But it's really silly to say we're making random mistakes, right? Or
exactly.
Some special force is making me be, the demons, right? Is that what we're going to talk about? Are we going to talk about angels and demons? Are we really at 2015? Are we going to have a conversation with the human race about angels and demons making people do stuff? No, ideas make people do stuff. Principles, themes, memories, experiences in their life is what they are a reflection of. The people who have moved them, the people who have touched them, the people who have hugged them, the people who have talked to them. This is what moves you through the world. Angels and demons are not pushing you anywhere. They didn't push anybody into being a murderer. They didn't help anybody to be a saint. That's not how it works.
Gary, I like when you describe this in those terms, because basically you're personalizing it for people. You're applying it to their real lives, how it affects our reasoning processes and all. And we got to do more shows on that, because I paint with broad strokes. I kind of basically present the basic principles. But when you go into those kinds of details, I think that's really helpful for people to just put these principles in perspective. All right, but for today's show, let's focus on this just basic fundamental principle of causality. Explain to them what exactly causality is and what are the implications of it.
Well, there's so many levels you could think about it on, right? You could think of it on, okay, we could take everything into a grain of sand, and we could just say that each piece of sand is being moved by the other pieces of sand on the beach, okay? And you could say that was the simplest diagram of the mechanism, okay? And that it takes shapes. If somebody steps in the sand, it leaves a footprint because the sand stays there until somebody moves it somewhere else, okay? So everything is connected in this little granular way, and that nothing is going to happen to it until some other grains push it into a way, right? So you can think about the universe that way and think of it as clumps of stuff, right? And you can see the clumps out in the universe, right? You can see the planets and the stars and all that stuff banging around, and nobody has the impression that all of a sudden something just does something for no reason, right? It does it because something else pushes against it. The forces move, the change in the dynamic of the interaction. But they're real interactions They're not invisible. Well, they're invisible to our senses, but you know what I mean. Gravity's invisible, but we know it's there, and it's always the same, right? It doesn't do anything funky or weird, all right? So I guess in that sense is how I would explain that it's a dynamic, and you just have to accept that this nothing can happen in a vacuum, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's all connected to each other, and if one piece is moving, it's going to move every other piece. That movement's going to spread through every other single piece.
Okay, and you know, like what I hear a lot from people who aren't comfortable with this concept of causality. Some people say, well, you know, like how can we say that everything is caused when we don't know the cause of everything? You'll hear that sometimes. And so let me describe causality in a way that demonstrates that we actually do know the cause of everything. Okay, because basically we can apply causality to single grains of sand, but we can also apply it to the entire universe. In other words, like the first known, the word known is very important because who knows what happened before it. But the first known instance of our universe is what we tend to refer to as the Big Bang. That's our most accepted theory. So like basically what happens is like the Big Bang is like was the complete cause, direct cause of what happened in the universe next. Let's say the second moment of the universe, the state of the universe at the second moment. Now, the state of the universe at the second moment is the complete cause explanation of the state of the universe at the third moment, and the third moment is the state of the universe is the complete explanation and cause of the fourth moment. All right, so like basically, if you carry that chain of effect, cause and effect, you know, comprising the entire universe all the way to today, you see how like the universe evolved in a causal fashion. And the other part of this causality that you need to understand is that it's not just like the universe in general that's evolving moment by moment, you know, step by step, state by state. Everything within, for example, the second moment of the universe was completely caused by the first moment. Okay, so basically the idea is like everything is caused, and it is possible to know the cause of everything if you invoke this like state by state evolution of the universe.
Well, I think if you obviously, it's like even something like crop circles, right? I mean, when people first heard about crop circles, the rational people would say somebody did it, right? Okay, why would aliens come here and draw pictures in wheat fields? It's silly, right? So, but you know, so there's a cause and effect, right? It found out it's not magic. Yes, there's always an explanation. And we see it in everything. See, every single thing I do. I pick up a pen, I write my name. I write my name. I don't write somebody else's name, right? There's reasons. I throw a bowling ball at some pins, right? They're gonna obey the laws of physics. They're not gonna jump out of the way of the ball. And we're just as limited. We can't jump out of the way of our life experience, right? If I have a pet and it dies badly, it's a life experience. It's changed who I am. I'm going to be more sympathetic. I'm going to see the signs of it in somebody else or in something else, and I'm going to immediately feel that empathy. I'm going to immediately feel that pain again because those memories are my experience, and that's what's going to make me be who I am. Now, if you're proud of who you are, you should be proud of your experiences that made you that. I'm proud of my relationship to the people I've known who have impacted me in a positive way. I am happy for their contribution to who I am. I feel good about that contribution. Why would I insult it by saying I was free of it? That their influence doesn't change me. That it didn't make me. Of course it made me. I'm going to honor that experience by saying that's what made me. I'm not going to dishonor that experience by saying, well, no, my father didn't have any influence at all because I have a free will. No, I don't. I have the will my father made, my mother made, and every other person I ever interacted with in my entire life made. I am a byproduct of all those people, and I should feel good about that.
Exactly, and then like feel good in a way that actually like that is more ennobling. And sometimes when we do great things, when we express greatness, we have a tendency like to maybe like feel arrogant or boastful and all. But like I think the kind of pride you're describing, Gary, is more based. It's a modest, it's a humble pride. It's about humility. In other words, you understand it's not up to you.
Pride in you. That's the whole point. I'm proud of you. Okay, I'm proud of the influence you've had on me. Okay, I respect that influence and I appreciate that influence. And anything I say or have changed, any way I have been changed, okay, is a reflection on you in the sense of that positive or negative effect. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying
Right.
from my perspective, it seems entirely positive, and it would be ludicrous for me to say I have some other force that's making me who I am. No, you're helping make me a better person. I don't become a better person
Exactly.
on my own.
Right. So we help each other become better people, and then we can't take credit for that either, because like we're doing that because somebody else, other people caused us to do that. Our education, our teachers, our parents, people we look up to. But all right, so like
Right.
so
Charles
we can
Dickens.
describe what?
Charles Dickens. I'm going to keep saying Dickens. Charles Dickens. Read your Dickens,
All right.
okay? It's all
Yeah, I hear you.
Dickens. Dickens got
A
it. He had it
Christmas
all.
Carol.
He had it all.
Yeah, we need the ghost of Christmas past to just like get
Exactly.
people to understand.
I'm telling you, it was the movie that made me. I'm just saying, as an adolescent, seeing that movie was one of those. Oh man, that really opened my eyes, because I'm saying I get I get the metaphor. Okay, I get it. That the world is there to be had. You don't want to leave anything behind. You don't want to leave the suffering behind. You don't want to leave the people homeless. You don't want to leave the mess. You want to fix it. You got a chance to fix it. Fix it.
Very cool. Another movie I think that's kind of like that. What is the one with Jimmy Stewart?
It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah,
What's,
yeah. It's Wonderful
yeah,
Life. It's a little bit hokey, but it's got a great theme in there. In that, as soon as you start thinking about what the world would be like without you, you might be a little depressed, because you might say, "Yeah, I left an awful lot in the holster here." Right? You know what I mean?
yeah. The bad guys won.
I undermade my association with people. Could have been better. I could have been kinder. I could have done a better job of making the world a better place, and that's a hugely important thing to be thinking. So as much as it's a hokey movie, that theme of realizing that you can imagine the world and you can imagine it better, and you have to imagine that you're going to play a part in making it better, because guess what? It's a fact. That's the inconvenient truth. That's the biggest inconvenient truth, is that we don't win the war unless you get off your butt and fight it.
Exactly. So in other words, when we say that everything is caused and we don't have a free will, we are not saying that what you do or don't do doesn't matter. What we do matters profoundly. It matters about climate change. It matters about so many kind of like major issues in the world. Basically, what we're saying is like what we do most fundamentally isn't up to us. Okay, and like so we need to understand that. But getting back to the principle of causality, another thing we have to understand in terms of understanding this chain of cause and effect that regresses back to everything we do, back to before the planet was created, into the Big Bang, whatever, is that a cause can never come after the effect. A cause always has to come before the effect, right? So if you make a decision and there's a cause for it, that cause happened before the decision was made. And the cause of that cause happened before that,
Exactly.
cause was...
So we understand that the idea has to come before the action. So again, we're back to inconvenient truth. First, it has to be a truth, okay? Or you're not going to do anything about the inconvenient part. You're not going to do anything about the broken until you recognize the broken. So first, the thought that it's broken has to exist. So when you hear somebody say it and you're going to rationalize excuses, you have to see yourself rationalizing. You have to see yourself making excuses. And there has to be a little gun that goes off in your head and say, I can hear you making an excuse, okay? And that's all you're doing. So play a fair game, get with the program. Logic says do the right thing, do the right thing.
Yeah, because I mean, one thing the free will belief harms us with is it basically doesn't allow us to think through our actions. Basically, our free will says like, well, we and other people do what we do because we have a free will. It doesn't motivate us, challenge us to explore why we do what we do, why other people do what we do. And the only way we're going to improve as human beings, as individuals, as a world, is to the extent we understand our fundamental motivations, why we do what we do. Only then can we change, become better people, and have a better world.
We have to believe in the strength of ideas. Ideas are the power, right? Knowledge is the power. That's where all the power comes from, is the knowledge, okay? And that's where you've got to go to find your best human, to find your best action. And yeah, people are just resigned to saying, I'm a bug, I'm an insect, I'm a machine that can't help itself. I'm full of emotions and full of needs and full of wants. and somehow, there's no control over that. Nothing can control that. No, an idea can control that. That's all it takes is the idea, I don't want to be a jerk. There, okay? I've done my job on earth now, right? Because all I have to do is say I don't want to be something, and as soon as I say I don't want it, I'm not going to be it, right? As soon as I want something, then I can use my desire mechanism in a positive way rather than a negative way.
Exactly. All right. So like one of the objections I think sometimes people try to advance in terms of like refuting causality, some people will say, well, like we don't know the cause of everything. You know, there's some like quantum behavior, these particles, the double slit experiment, entanglement. There's like some processes in the quantum world that we don't understand what's causing it, and these people like they base their conclusion on that they're uncaused on the fact that they can't perceive or detect the cause of it. I mean, come on, that is like so unscientific. That's so illogical.
Well, it's illogical in many different ways. But first, I'd say, yeah, it's not even a truth. Okay, let's say the complexity of the theory is a lot of vapor. Okay, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. There isn't any real substance. But even if we took it for granted that photons had no position, that they just were ambiguous and they just kind of floated in this cloud. Well, even if we took that as the truth is the cloud has to obey really strict rules of probability. It will only do 250 things. You know what I mean? It won't do 2 zillion things. It can only do 250 possible outcomes, right? So it's limited in its outcomes. So quite clearly it's already obeying cause and effect in the sense that there's obvious rules and it can't disobey the rules. It has to fit the probability outcomes, so it's already obligated, you know, whether you think it's amorphous or not, whether you think it's a shapeless blob. It's not a random blob, and it's not a, it doesn't have any freedom. It's a completely confined blob of fog. Okay.
Exactly, and people will like make the claim that, well, you know, that particles are actually behaving probabilistically, and somehow they seem to think that probabilistic behavior is some kind of like an entryway into free will, as if our decisions were probabilistic will make them any more free. It doesn't.
Yeah. Well, they take the word probable to mean the word infinite, and that's not what probable means. It means exactly the opposite, that there's a likelihood and then there's a preposterous never happened. Okay, it might be part of the possibility, but if it never happens, it's only technically possible, right? So I mean, it doesn't mean anything. The real cause and effect will oblige the result, and that science can't get past. So I'm just saying, we already know it's a limited amount of freedom, and any limitation on freedom is no freedom, correct, in a way? Right? I mean, you can't say something's free because, oh yeah, I'm free to be 160 pounds. Okay, but what's what I'm saying? I'm not unlimited. I can't be any weight I want. I can't be any size and function. So it's still being obedient to strict rules. So there's no point in calling me saying I'm free, even though I can't be 5 million pounds and I can't be no pounds.
Yeah, and again, what you said before is like these particles that we use probability equations to predict their behavior, these particles are acting causally. In other words, the probabilities are equations. They're mathematical equations, and like, you know, I basically like did a bit of research into how they derive these equations, and essentially, like, because of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, so fine, we can't simultaneously measure the exact position and momentum of a single particle, and that's what like prevents us from using classical mechanics, you know, to predict behavior. So what do? Instead of measuring the position and momentum of a single particle, they'll measure the position and momentum of a group of particles, and they'll do this through classical mechanics over and over and over and over, and that comprises the data set that will then allow us to derive the probabilities.
Right. So again, they're just putting time into a static circumstance. So they're just allowing the thing to be different each time because they're saying, I'll give it 20 minutes, or I'll give it 10 minutes, or I'll give it 5 minutes. And obviously it's doing a lot of permutations in that time. So it's not even the same particle anymore. So how can you say there's no cause and effect for that individual particle when you're not measuring the individual particle, you're measuring a whole cascade of particles. So again, how have you in any way impugned cause and effect? You haven't done anything to cause and effect. You've just put time into a static question. Who am I? If you ask me who I am now, there's one answer. You ask me who I am this week, there's a different answer. You ask who I've been for the last year, there's a different answer, right? So that's bogus to say you know who I am now by knowing who I was a year ago.
Oh, absolutely. All right, and it's like so, like basically, like again, to answer the objection, some people say that that attempting to refute causality would have some kind of like entryway to free will. Basically, the only way you can refute causality, I mean, maybe there's two ways. One is to claim that things are not caused, and again, if you apply that to human decisions, and if you're saying our human decisions are not caused, they're not caused by us. The other kind of like action mechanism that is theoretically possible. It's impossible. I mean, it defies logic. Basically, like some people say, and no, it does. It's illogical. Some people say that like our decisions are causa sui. They're causing themselves. As if that's another way of refuting causality. But if that were true and it's not,
innate knowledge. They're just basically saying, look, if you do the wrong thing, you did it because you overwhelmed some sort of innate knowledge that the angels gave you or God gave you, and so you've somehow made a volitional act of rejecting some fundamental knowledge that you were born with, and you've overwhelmed it with something you created. You demonized this good thing for no good reason except you wanted to be a demon. It just doesn't make any sense, because you have to have enough thought to be able to create demons in your head to actually to oppress this will to be good. This will that's supposed to exist that we're overwhelming with our evil. The evil that comes from where? If the devil made me do it, then I'm still not guilty, right? So, I mean, it doesn't even work as a theory. If you create angels and devils controlling our behavior, then all you're doing is you're just changing who's the puppeteer. I mean, why bother with this puppeteer nonsense? And let's just admit the universe is all strings. I don't mean string theory, but you know what I'm saying. It's all strings of time, and all the interactions are related to each other, and you just can't escape the fact that you're a byproduct, not a product.
Again, yes, and again, like the universe evolves state by state, moment by moment. If you want to know the cause of everything that's going on right now, you just follow that chain of causality, of the universe back moment by moment, state by state. So again, like you can't.
History is there. We can all see it. We can see it in our own behavior. We can see it in the world we live in. It all has a history. It has a history. The metal that made your car came from somewhere. The atoms came from somewhere. They didn't just poof into existence. They didn't just poof into being steel. So let's just admit the truth that all this stuff has been interacting for a really long time, and we're just part of the interaction that takes place in a universe that acquires a replicating molecule.
Okay, Gary, we got about like 7 minutes left or so, somewhere around there. Last episode, we were talking about the fact that, like, all right, psychologists don't get that we don't have a free will because they have this certain kind of ideology they need to adhere to, and the physicists don't really understand their phenomena. They just maybe understand the math. So the question is, like, do you think maybe among the disciplines, the academic disciplines, do you think that the field that would be most receptive to this message maybe, and again, like, I'm wondering how, like, is there a field of logic that is outside of philosophy? Because I don't trust the philosophers. I mean, is there some kind of like scientific, logic discipline? Because I'm trying to find, what academia.
I think we have to start it. Yeah, I think we have to. I think we're going to have to invent the fellowship of the sensibility or something, the fellowship of the rational, and go on our mission to convert the world to let's just be rational. Let's use evidence. And let that guide us to the truth. Let the evidence point to the truth, and quit playing games with I want it to be something else, or I wish and I hope, and man, I want to hang out with Yoda, and if you're trite, then I can't live with Yoda in the future. I mean, this kind of, it is really that bad. I mean, the intellectuals have completely left the building in so many respects, and you're just saying, well, like you say, you're almost puzzled. How could they be that smart and not be able to add 2 plus 2? I mean, how can you know all that math and you failed 2 plus 2?
And Gary, I think that's our challenge. The guy, Chris Mooney, a science writer, he wrote a book a few years back called The Republican Brain, but it actually applies it applies to Democrats, Republicans, it applies to everybody in general. Basically, what he found was that most of us, have we believe what we believe not based on the logic. We believe it to a great extent based on what we need to believe because of our psychological needs, our emotional needs, and all that. So I think the science is about overcoming that. Science is about overcoming that personal bias. Science is about being objective. So we've got to kind of like just basically, I think maybe repeat the message over and over until finally this.
Yeah, love the truth. Have respect for the power of the truth. It's in the Bible, right? The truth will set you free. Well, though you couldn't find truer words, right? There's about 17 good sentences in the Bible, and that's one of them. Okay, the truth is the solution.
All right, Gary. Some people say that, well, I for breakfast this morning I had toast, but I could have had pancakes if I wanted to. I could have chosen otherwise. Explain how causality, how that's not a defense.
Otherwise, if I showed up in an Aunt Jemima suit and I said, yeah, George, let's have pancakes today, right? I mean, the only way you would have done something different is if something different happened. Somebody would have to make it happen, right? A mouse would push the box off the shelf and you say, oh yeah, pancakes, maybe I'll do that today. But quite obviously you didn't do it because this is your disposition today. Maybe tomorrow you'd have a different disposition because you watched different TV commercials and you had a conversation with Gary and you talked about pancakes, and then you decide to have waffles because waffles are like pancakes except better. So you said, okay, I'm going to have waffles. But that's exactly the process. It's going to happen because there's going to be a cascade of cause and effect that's going to make it happen.
Exactly. And another answer to this, like I could have done otherwise, claim is no, you could not have because like there's only one universe, and the universe evolved moment by moment, state by state, in a causal manner. If there was a different universe that evolved in a different way, yes, only then could you have done otherwise. But that universe doesn't exist.
Right. Going back to where we started, right? So to 100 billion neurons, why are they there? Right? If our will is free, why are they there? Okay, why do you have 100 million? 20, whatever, a billion, 20,000 billion,
I don't know.
20,000 billion, 20,000 billion roadways in your brain. Why do you think you have them if the car doesn't have to drive on the road? I mean, you know what I'm saying? If you're a car of consciousness isn't driving all those roads, why are they there? Why is your brain wasting 100 watts of electricity every minute of your existence, okay, if it's producing something you could freely escape the boundaries of?
Exactly. And these neurons, this biology, this brain biology is not quantum biology. These are molecules. This is not the quantum world. So your brain is mechanistic.
Look, I mean, maybe computers aren't terribly reliable, but they're pretty darn reliable, and that's what your brain is doing. It's doing a mechanical process, okay? It's got one hell of a CPU, all right? It's 4 billion years in the making, right? So wait till Intel can say that about its chips, right? It does not know 4 billion years in the making. This is 4 billion years in the making, and it's one heck of a good device at seeing the world, modeling the world, and logically analyzing the world. And that's what we should be doing with our brains instead of wasting our time with fairy tales and unicorns and magic and mush about how we're going to escape the boundaries of logic and reason.
Absolutely. All right. Again, free will is impossible because it is logically impossible. And some people say, well, science hasn't proved causality. Causality is not just a scientific principle. Causality is a logical principle. Not only does science tell us that causality is the way things work, our logic tells us this.
Well, and you got more. It's like you have the Earth's mass worth of evidence on one side, and you have fly piss on the other side.
Nothing.
Nothing. They got nothing as evidence of any of this magic.
Absolutely. All right, Gary, we got about a minute left, right? Another great podcast.
Yeah, we're doing all right. Yeah.
We can't take credit. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
If we screw up, it's not our fault. If we do good, it's not.
Well, that's the funny thing, right? The audience I'm cursing, they're the ones who made me, right? So they did really well because they made me. I did pretty terrible because I made them. right? So the climate change deniers are our fault, right? We're the ones that got to do a better job because we made them exist, ironically.
Yeah. Right.
All right, so it's good seeing you, George, and we'll
Yeah.
do it again, of course. You know, we'll
Sounds
keep
good.
at it, keep
Thanks, Gary.
hammering.
Sounds
Okay.
good, man. Talk soon.